I am Kim Dixit, the co-founder and CEO of the Red Pen, which is a independent education consulting company based in Mumbai. And we've been here for 9 years supporting students and families through the application process for both for undergraduate for undergraduate applications anywhere in the world, not just the US. We happen to be talking about the US tonight. And also for students, looking for MBAs or postgrad degrees or boarding schools. So any educational choices that families have to make, we are supporting them. And my partner, Namita Mehta, the president of the Red Pen, is also here tonight to support me in helping get all your questions answered. So that's basically how we are going to move ahead this evening. We have with us Lindsay Skeens from George Washington University in Washington, D.C., and Amy Markham from Mount Holyoke University in Massachusetts. So Amy, I will let you go ahead and go first and talk about Mount Holyoke, and then you can hand it over to Lindsay. And while you're speaking, I'm just gonna turn my camera off so that I'm not distracting. Go ahead.
Sure. Great. Well, thank you so much, Kim, and it's really wonderful to be part of this. So good evening to everybody who is tuning in. And I am going to tell you just a little bit about Mount Holyoke and our admission process. And while I do that, I'm just going to give you some visual references of Mount Holyoke, if I can bring up my screen here. Here we go. So Mount Holyoke is a women's college. We have 2,200 students, and we're actually the oldest women's college in the United States. We're founded in 1837 and a member of the Seven Sisters, which was an organization or a collective of women's colleges that were established to offer really the same caliber of education that the Ivy League was offering. That at the time that the Seven Sisters came together, there were no women attending the Ivy League institutions. So this was trying to give a high caliber opportunity to women. So something that I would say is unique about Mount Holyoke, we were asked to speak about that, is of course the fact that we are a women's college. And something about going to a women's college that is, I think, quite compelling is the network that you build. Choosing a women's college is a pretty unconventional choice. And the students who come to a women's college I think are people who know themselves really well. They're willing to step outside the box a little bit and do something differently by making that choice. And I find that the students develop binds or connections that are stronger at women's colleges. And I've worked at coeducational institutions as well, but I really see the network that happens at Mount Holyoke being tremendous. And it happens among the Seven Sisters colleges too. So even though we maybe have a little bit of a rivalry with Wellesley and Smith and Bryn Mawr and Barnard, we are very much connected to each other, so it can be quite beneficial in job searches later for our graduates, because having gone to a Seven Sisters college, if there's someone from one of the others on a interviewing board, they're probably going to be very interested in talking to a Mount Holyoke student. We're also an undergraduate institution, which means that all of our facilities are reserved specifically for our students who are undergrads, not graduate students. So very sophisticated machinery and access to the best professors that sometimes are reserved for graduate students. That's not a factor at Mount Holyoke. Another unique thing about Mount Holyoke is that we are usually ranked in the top 5 in equestrian programs in the United States. And while it may be that none of you are equestrian athletes, you may enjoy horses or want an opportunity to ride, and you would be able to do that. We have 2 stables and about 70 horses on campus. We also have a Chihuly statue in our library. This is quite large. If you look at the staircase in the background, that gives you a little bit of a sense of scale. And there's a coffee shop right next to the statue. And I think for this photo, lots of things were cleared away. It looks kind of stark there, but there are tables and students sit and visit with each other and faculty in this atrium area. Our location is in Massachusetts. We're in the northeastern part of the US. We're about an hour and a half from Boston and 3 hours from New York City, in a really beautiful area and very safe area of the state. And we are also connected to 4 other colleges in what's known as the 5-College Consortium. And that consists of Mount Holyoke, University of Massachusetts at Amherst, Hampshire College, Smith College, and Amherst College. And so across these 5 campuses, there are over 6,000 courses taught, and our students can take courses at any of the other campuses. You can get involved in activities and socialize across the different campuses. And there's a free bus that connects each campus. The farthest one away is the University of Massachusetts, which by car would take maybe 20 minutes to drive to. On the bus, it's more like 35, because the bus stops at Hampshire College and Amherst College along the way. We do have 4 seasons in the Northeast, and our campus is very beautiful. Students from India get used to the weather, and I think they kind of enjoy it as something different. So that is just a little bit about Mount Holyoke. I was asked also just to speak about how we review applications. And international applications are read by our international admission team, and they're always read by at least 2 people. And then we come together and we discuss all aspects of the application, from the grades in school, the external exam results, letters of recommendation, activities and accomplishments, essays. We are SAT and ACT optional and have been for 20 years. So we know how to evaluate applications when there's no test scores submitted. We're very comfortable with that. And so when we come together to review the applications, what we do is we assign what we hope will be a final decision to each applicant, and that's the decision that we really want to make. But then we also put in what we call a preliminary decision, and that's kind of what, if we've got too many students that we've admitted, it's identifying that, oh, this is one that we could live with putting on the wait list, even though we really might like to admit the person. Or it might be a situation where there's somebody that we want to wait list as our final decision, but perhaps they're bringing some special talent that after we finish reviewing all of the applications, we realize would be missing. So we would put in the preliminary decision that we would be willing to admit them. We think the person could be successful. They might not be our top choice, but we recognize that they're bringing us something that we might want. So after we do all of that, we look at how the numbers shake out. And inevitably, we have admitted more than we want to. So that's when we go back to that sort of preliminary decision to see, well, what was our second choice? Who are the people that we can move out of that admit group? And so that's kind of shaping our class, and then pushing in any students that maybe represent something that we're coming out a little bit low on, because we really want to balance for personal talents and backgrounds and things like that. So that's kind of a nutshell of our application process and Mount Holyoke. We'll be answering a lot more questions later. And now I think I'll be turning it over to Lindsay so she can introduce George Washington University.
Right. Thank you so much, Amy. Lindsay, I just wanted to mention for 1 second, and I don't know, Amy, if you wanted to say this or I'm just going to say it, but just that, for our audience, Amy does come to India very regularly. She's a very experienced international admissions officer and knows India and our students really well. I think one of the reasons for that, I mean, there are many reasons, but is that Mount Holyoke does an amazing program in August in Mumbai called the Mount Holyoke Shakti program, where high school girls are selected to participate in a 2-day program. So, I mean, I just wanted to mention that because I think that, it's a great introduction to Mount Holyoke, and the way, and because faculty come for it and things like that. So I just wanted to kind of mention that you have a strong connection already to our students.
Thanks for pointing that out, and actually thanks to the Red Pen too, because you have been tremendous supporters of MHC Shakti and presenters, and it's been a great partnership. And sadly, we are not running the conference in 2020, but we are really eager to have it in 2021.
Great.
But
Great.
I hope to be back in India. I'm usually there 3 times a year. So hopefully meeting some of you in the future.
Yes, we're
Thanks.
looking forward to that. Okay, thank you. Sorry about that, Lindsay. I'll let you.
Oh, totally fine. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Good morning from here on the East Coast. I'm in Arlington, Virginia. I'm right outside of Washington, D.C. My name is Lindsay Skeens. I'm a Senior Assistant Director at the George Washington University in our undergrad admission office, and I am the rep to India. I'm not in India as often, it seems, as Amy is. I'm typically there about 2 times a year. I was actually supposed to be there last month, and we know how that didn't get to happen. So I too am looking forward to being able to come back and hopefully meet some of you in person. I'm just going to go through some of the basic information about GW, just to give you a broad idea of what our school is all about. We are in the heart of downtown Washington, D.C., like smack in the middle of all things that D.C. is known for. So you can walk to the White House and the National Mall, the monuments, the memorials. The Kennedy Center for Fine and Performing Arts is just a quick walk from our campus as well. So all the things that you can think of when you think of DC are very accessible to our students. We are very much a campus in the city and not a city campus. So we have like a radius that we fill in the Foggy Bottom neighborhood, and it's a 5 by 6 block radius. And it's not fenced off by any means. And there are other parts of the city that are incorporated into that radius of our campus, but that 5 by 6 blocks is what our students can call home. So that's where the residence halls are, their classes, professors, the library, lots of different food options. So we're going to go from I Street to E Street and 23rd Street to 17th Street. So it's not too large at all. It's a really nice size. We also have a second campus in the Foxhall neighborhood of Washington, D.C. that gets to offer the exact opposite of the hustle and bustle that you're going to find in the Foggy Bottom neighborhood. And we call this the Mount Vernon campus. And this campus is available and accessible 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We have a shuttle that runs back and forth. And about 1/3 of our students will live on this campus, but all students will be taking classes on this campus. First-year students are going to take their first-year writing course over here. Our athletic facilities, some of them are on this campus. It also has its own library, fitness facilities, like I said, residence halls. Lots of different things are happening on this campus as well. So we just have 2 campuses, about 2.5 miles apart, and they get to offer you 2 very, very different experiences, which I think is a nice perk. If you want to get away from the hustle and bustle for a little while, Mount Vernon is the place to be. But if you know that you love the hustle and bustle, then Foggy Bottom is maybe the place to sign up for more classes or to preference for your housing. GW has a little less than 11,000 students on campus, so we're a good mid-size institution. We are a Tier 1 research institution, so there's always something happening, always something being discovered on our campus. So it's really exciting to be a student there. Our student to faculty ratio is 18:1, and the average class size is 29. So students are really going to be able as their professors. If faculty hear GW and they think of political science and international affairs because of our location in DC, and yes, we absolutely have those programs and we do them very well, but we have lots of other programs as well. So we have everything from the fine and performing arts to the liberal arts to the visual arts to engineering, the hard sciences, and everything in between. So we are broken into 7 different schools as part of the larger university, and that is the Columbian College of Arts and Sciences, the School of Media and Public Affairs, the Corcoran School of Art and Design, the School of Business, the Elliott School of International Affairs, and then you have the Milken Institute School of Public Health. And whenever I have to list all 7, I can never remember to list all 7. We do have one more, and when it pops back into my head, I'll let you know. The School of Engineering and, did I say engineering? If I didn't, it's the School of Engineering and Applied Sciences. So we have a lot of different opportunities for students, and we want you to get really well-rounded education so students can double major, minor, and take classes across these schools as well. We have over 450 clubs and organizations for students to join outside of the classroom. Internships are a hallmark of our education, with 72% of our students doing one, if not more than one, while they're on campus. A lot of our students are also studying abroad and participating in community service. As far as admissions goes, we are an early decision school. We are early decision 1 and 2 and regular decision as well. And then we are on the Common application. So everything that you're going to need to do is on the Common app. We try and make it as easy as possible. And then similar to Mount Holyoke, we are also test optional. We have not required tests since 2015. So we are very well versed in how to read an application without having those test scores as part of it. So that's the very quick rundown about GW. I hope you found some of that helpful, and our emails will be available at the end of the presentation in case you do have more specific questions.
Great. Thank you so much. Lindsay, that was really helpful. I think that gave us a great overview, and I think I'm glad you mentioned all those different schools, because we do get a lot of students interested in different programs, and they're like, oh, I didn't know GW had that. Because all anyone does is politics, right? So yeah, it's great that you highlighted all that. So I'm going to go ahead now and go back to sharing my screen and go through some of the questions that I have for you. And we're also going to take questions from our attendees, which they will post on the chat and we will send to you. So this year, as you know, I think we discussed a little bit of this before we started, but you know, this year is going to be an interesting year. It's going to be different. And as you said, you guys have never really given as much weight or paid much attention, if at all, to standardized testing. But this year, you know, will there be other things you're looking at more carefully than in the past, because you may be dealing with, say, you know, transcripts with incomplete grades in 2020 academic year, or you may be looking at you know, students who couldn't visit your campus and you really value demonstrated interest. Students maybe, will you ask students to do an interview, or would you put more, would you be more likely to look at, say, an initial view interview this year or something like that? I mean, is there anything that you're planning to already change and do differently in the coming year when it comes to evaluating applications? So Amy, I will let you answer that question first, and then I'll move on to the
Sure. So in the interest of full transparency, we have not made any decisions about any of that yet. I have to say, in all honesty, that until really this week, we have been entirely focused on the incoming class, the class of 2024, since their deadline to commit to us was May 1st. And then we had a few students who had extensions to the end of last week. So all of our efforts had been in that direction. But what I can tell you is that because we are what's known as a holistic admission operation, and considering all aspects of the application, we will really be looking for context to understand transcripts. So Kim, as you mentioned, you know, grades, the transcripts that may present differently than we're used to, or incomplete work. In the United States, a lot of coursework for this semester is being done on a pass-fail basis. This is where there are a couple of areas that may end up weighing a little bit more, and that will be, I think, letters of recommendation. What teachers have to say about how students were engaging during the time that school was not in session. Also, you mentioned, Kim, initial view interviews. I don't know whether everybody knows what that is, but basically there's initial view, and another company that is well known is called Veracant. And what they do is they're independent interviewing organizations. So you can schedule an interview with someone who is not representative of any college or university, but will ask you some questions. It's video recorded, and then you would send that link to any college or university to which you're applying, so that we as admission officers can review those videos. They also have a writing component, an impromptu essay, so that we can assess the writing a little bit. We really like initial view interviews because it gives us the writing aspect as well, and just can bring an application a little bit more alive. So I do think that we will be looking at those and probably setting up increased opportunities for students to schedule online interviews with us or some of our interns. So those would be the main ways that I would see us possibly looking to other areas. And I guess I would say one more thing is that we often see a discrepancy between the coursework in school for Indian students and the performance on external exams, which is often much higher on the external exams. So that's where context and understanding through recommendations and interviews will be really helpful to us.
Okay, great. Lindsay, I'll let you answer that question, but I wanted to just ask, I think kids and families are very concerned about, if, like you said, Amy, these 10th grade board exams aren't happening and they're kind of, the final grade is being based on internal assessments. They're worried that, normally colleges are giving a lot of weight to the final board exam, but now it's not there. So how are you going to really assess that? But that's the concern. But I think you've addressed it. So Lindsay, I'll let you go ahead.
Thank you. So again, similar to Mount Holyoke, we do a holistic review process. So even though this year might look a little bit different with pass-fail grades, board exams looking very, very different, that's not anything for us, and we've already discussed, we're not going to hold that against the student's application because it was completely out of your control. All of this was completely out of our control too. So don't worry about the board exams looking different or your pass-fail grades in a class or something like that. GW has determined we want to make this as easy and flexible as a process for students. We don't ever want to be the cog in the wheel. We don't ever want to make things more complicated or more stressful than it has to be. So if you have pass-fail grades, we're going to look at those just like we would have looked at regular grades. If you got a P or a satisfactory or whatever, scale your school is using, as long as you got the passing grade, we're seeing what we needed to see. Same thing with board exams. There's not going to be scores for some, and that's fine. We don't weigh our decision in a holistic review process on one specific thing. So if it's not there, that's okay. We have lots of other things that we can use to come up with our decision. We will not be doing any initial view or Vericant or anything because we don't do admission interviews. That's something that we stopped doing, I think, in 2016. So at least for us, that's one less thing that you have to think about. We don't have an admission interview process. And then similarly, we are going to make sure our students know even more this year than in the past that we don't measure demonstrated interest. So students who haven't been able to get to campus or haven't been able to engage with us online or anything like that, that doesn't hurt a student's application. We understand this is a weird year. If you haven't been able to engage online because you were in class during that event or something, for us, that's absolutely okay. If you haven't come to campus, that's absolutely okay. So there's a few, and it's going to be different at every school that you're looking at. So these are great questions to ask the other schools that you're looking at as well, because Amy and I have different answers just because our schools are different schools. So we hope to make it as easy and flexible as possible, but really a whole lot is not going to change for us this year just because our processes in the past aren't dictating a need to change in this environment.
Great, thank you. I think that's very clear. So it's good to, I think it's good to just emphasize, the flexibility and the holistic nature of the process and how this year will be kind of consistent. So I wanted to move on to this question because I think you both gave a very quick, which is what we asked you for, a very quick introduction of your colleges. So could you say a little bit more about, the kinds of students that would thrive at each of your campuses and when it comes to anything from, personality traits to, academic interests, et cetera, what in your experience, because I know you both, sort of have a lot of experience with the students who come to your campuses, just tell us a little bit about them. Amy?
Sure. I think that part of what I touched on was the students who come to a women's college are already a little bit out of the box, and they're making that unconventional choice. And because of that, and I mentioned that they seem particularly willing to open themselves up to different things, to try new things. I think they're also extremely supportive of one another, mostly because they are people who are often taking a little bit different path and not necessarily the safe route, so they appreciate that in each other. So the kind of student that would be happy at Mount Holyoke is probably somebody who's not really narrow or programmed, you know, for example, coming and saying, this is what I'm majoring in. I've got my 4 years planned out before I ever get there, and I want to stay on that narrow path. There are more people who are going to be, if they're going to open themselves up to taking advantage of surprises along the way, that's the kind of person who's going to get the most out of a Mount Holyoke education, actually any education. But I think particularly at Mount Holyoke, because there's so much that is people just trying new things and validating each other for doing that and encouraging each other for doing that. And so the students who really thrive at Mount Holyoke are students who, when they graduate, they're going to be able to say, I came here to do this, this, and this. I never really imagined that I was also going to do that, that, and that. And I'm so glad that I did. I didn't know I had a talent in this. We have lots of students who end up majoring actually in computer science because they took one coding course just because it seemed a little bit interesting to them. And they went in a completely different direction than they expected. So that sort of pioneer entrepreneurial spirit, willingness to try things new, stretch one's comfort zone, that's the person who's going to be happiest and probably thrive the most at Mount Holyoke.
That's great. Lindsay, would you like to say a little bit about GW?
Sure. I think a student who is the best fit for GW is a student who likes to be busy and wants to be engaged with what campus and the city is offering. Our students are always running somewhere, to class, to office hours, to an internship, to a group meeting, to a meal with their friends. They're always moving at a pace a little bit faster than I'm at least moving when I'm but it's because they're taking advantage of the opportunities. It's not lost on our students that they are in this really great, diverse, dynamic city, and they want to take advantage of that. They want to pick the brains of their professors. They want to do internships to build their skills. So a student who is best at GW is somebody who wants to take advantage of everything that the campus has to offer, as well as the city.
That's great. You know, I'm skipping, actually, I don't know if you saw, I just skipped ahead to one of my last questions because I'm finding that on every webinar, I'm not getting to this question. And I think it's a really important question from what I know about both of your institutions. So I just want to put it up first. And before I ask this specific question, I'm getting at least three specific questions. Is that correct? From the audience just to GW. So I'm going to ask you right now, Lindsay, about those, and then maybe you can also add this in about, you know, career, you know, sort of preparedness for internships and jobs. Okay, so the first question is, how do students apply at the undergraduate level if they plan to pursue the MD program later at GW? Now, I think I know the answer to this, but I'm going to let you answer.
Sure. So our MD program is completely separate from our undergraduate programs. So students who are interested in coming to GW as an undergrad apply separately as an undergraduate student. And then if you are interested in the MD program, we do have a pre-health advising track. So students who are interested in going into pre-med or like pre-dentistry, pre-physical therapy, anything like that, have access to 2 advisors who can help them determine that path and the steps to take to get to that application process and that post-grad experience. But it is completely separate. You would apply for the med school the same way maybe as you applied for as a first-year student. You know, it doesn't have any connection to your undergraduate experience.
Okay, so you don't have a joint sort of BS MD program that's continuous?
So we do have a BAMD program. We have a 7-year program where students spend 3 years in undergrad, and they move directly onto the medical school. So that is a very, very small population of our students who are in that program. It's got a less than 1% acceptance rate. And it's for US and Canadian citizens who are interested in shaving a year off of their undergraduate experience and then moving right into the medical school. For that program, it's important to know that we are not test optional for that one. So we do require SAT or ACT and an SAT 2 in math or science. And we want to see pretty significant patient-facing medical experience, and research also helps.
Okay, that's great to know. That was going to be, that's what I meant by, I think I know the answer to that. And the main part being that it's not really available to international students except Canadians. So
correct.
Interesting. Okay. And I think that, just one more question specifically for you before I move on to Amy, but is, and this is not necessarily related to careers and jobs, but how does GW treat, I think what they mean is read applications for US citizens pursuing the IB diploma abroad in terms of scholarship consideration for scholarships?
Yep, so we read every student the same way for merit-based scholarships. So as long as you submit an application to GW, then you're going to be considered for merit-based scholarships. You don't have to submit any additional paperwork. You don't have to have submitted tests. You know, we're test optional through and through. So if there's tests, you're eligible. If there's not tests, you're eligible. So regardless of your citizenship standing, you're going to be considered for merit-based scholarships.
Okay, and need-based?
So need-based is going to be through the FAFSA and the CSS profile. So we don't offer need-based aid for international students, but we do for US citizens.
So they would just need to fill that out. Okay, great. Got it.
Correct.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
Okay, now Amy, I'm going to let you go on and talk about career preparedness for Mount Holyoke women.
Sure. So we have, as every college does, we have an office on campus that is, ours is called the Career Development Center, which has always been known at Mount Holyoke as the CDC, which these days, I don't know whether that's a household set of letters in India, but in the United States, it's Center for Disease Control, which has certainly different importance these days. But our Career Development Center is helping students with internships, resume writing workshops, interview skills, networking with on-campus recruitment for different companies that come and recruit our students, networking our students with our graduates. About 10,000 Mount Holyoke graduates live all over the world. And so that alumni connection with the graduates and current students is particularly big in terms of helping our students not only with internships, but finding their first jobs, getting settled in new cities around the world when they move in. We have clubs, Mount Holyoke clubs all over the world, basically. So it's not only networking with professional recruiters, working with students on their own skills of how they present themselves, but also connecting with within the Mount Holyoke family.
Oh, Kim, you're muted.
Kim, you're muted.
Sorry, I couldn't unmute. One of the things that I always, tell students when they are looking at Mount Holyoke and kind of worrying, I think, about, it's a small women's college in a place that's not, Boston or whatever, and is that you guys have this unique curriculum to career program, which I think is a nice link, that it's a nice way for students to think that, they can get, that the college is concerned about that. It's not that, okay, you're at a liberal arts college, so get the liberal arts holistic view and then figure it out. You guys are very sort of clear that the curriculum is, is directly sort of trying to channel students into the future. So the curriculum is doing that. I think one question I'm getting here, and I'm just going to move back. It's here. You spoke about financial aid, Lindsay, for for domestic students and international students. Is GW need blind or need aware for, well, for international students, they don't offer need-based aid, so it doesn't matter, right?
Right.
So it's all merit-based, okay.
Right. Yeah, we are a need-aware institution, but at the reading level, like as an application reader, that's not information that I see. That happens much higher above me.
Okay, so if there was a perception that, that a student would not be able to, I think you guys also are one of in colleges that requires that international certification of finances earlier than later, right?
We require the financial certificate for international students as part of the application. Yes.
Right. So just for the attendees, some colleges only ask for that once you're admitted, but GW asks for that financial certification earlier. So that's an extra piece of the application process.
Yes.
Amy, is Mount Holyoke need aware or need blind for international students?
We are need aware. So what happens is we decide who we want to admit, and then the financial aid office will look at that and run their budget based on who we want to admit. So I talked about that two-tier, the sort of second choice admission decision. Sometimes somebody that we want to admit could be pushed out because of very high financial need. The benchmark, I would say, for finances to be completely neutral is a family who can contribute $25,000 per year. If they can do that or more, there's really not going to be, finances are not going to come into our admission decision at all. If you get down to below 25,000 and above 15,000, it's going to be a factor. It might not be the determining factor, but it will be a factor. When you get below 15,000, it's going to be extremely difficult to get in.
I'm so glad you gave numbers. I think that's really helpful because people don't, I mean, it's kind of a sort of black hole out there, and students will try, and if they know exactly how much they need to sort of contribute, then it's much easier to decide where to apply. And
I should say one more thing on that just before you move on, Kim, is that it's important, students, for you and parents, if you're in the audience as well, to understand that those figures are the institution's assessment of your ability to pay. So the application will ask, how much do you think you can contribute per year? So you might say, based on what I told you, okay, we'll gamble a little bit, we're going to say 15,000. But we might look at all the information, our financial aid office, not the admission office, but might look at all the information on the documents you supply and think that based on your assets and various other pieces of information, actually, we think you can contribute $27,000. So you 15, we say 27. That 27 is what your financial aid award is going to be based on. So it's not what you ask for, it's what we assess your need to be. What we ask, we ask you to say what you think you can contribute, because sometimes what happens for us is that if we assess you here and you're saying we can only do here, and the cost is up here, we're going to look at that and say, we are so far off in what we're expecting them to pay from what they think they can do, that it's not worth putting an offer out here, because they think they're going to pay 15, but we think they can do 27. If they really think 15, they're not going to come up with the extra 12. So it's important to be realistic in what you really think you can pay.
That's great. That's also really good advice. It's important, yeah, like, because people don't know how to sort of navigate that process. With this question on the slide here, do you feel like there's going to be any impact in the coming year based on budgets, attending students, how much money you need to give to US citizens, etc., for international students this year? Or do you know? Amy?
I would say we don't know. Mount Holyoke, while we don't have the largest endowment in the United States, it's pretty healthy. Of course, it's taking a hit right now. We are very committed to meeting what we assess as a student's financial need. So here on May 12th, I would say that there won't be a change. depending upon how long this goes on and what happens and whether lots of students don't come back in the fall, you know, there may be a situation where we have to reassess, but we are not planning on tightening our belt in that way. We're going to look to other ways to make up revenue shortfalls that will not impact the student experience.
Thank you. Lindsay, anything different?
I think we're in a similar boat. We can't make any calls quite yet for next year. It's a different fiscal year, and we know it's going to be a very, very different financial kind of fiscal situation for us because of the current COVID environment. I can imagine that we may be giving less in scholarships, but that's just my guess. But no guarantee. They could surprise me and flip it around, and that would be the best case scenario. But I think we may have a little bit fewer scholarships, but I think I definitely can't speak to the federal financial aid for any U.S. citizens, how that will pan out, because that happens at a much, much higher level than admissions.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so now I'm going backwards through my questions. And this question is really, you know, I think the best way for prospective students to learn about student life on campus is, you know, obviously to listen to these webinars. Can you give any other suggestions, like social media? Are you guys doing any special sort of anything new or different now for students to learn more about campus? Lindsay, I'll let you start.
Sure. So we are currently doing online information sessions. So it's the same information session you would get on campus, but we're just doing it remotely, and it's actually much more accessible now than it has been in the past, which is really nice. And then we also have a virtual campus tour. If you are interested in seeing more about campus, that is the very bare bones of the experience, but like picturing where you're going to be, I think is very important. I always like to tell students also to use Google Street View because we're smack in the middle of the city, and our virtual tour, the word is not animated, but it's, I guess, illustrated. And it has photos, but it's not a camera moving around. You don't get to see people, but on Google Street View, you can actually see people and students and, you know, what it looks like on the street in a normal day in DC. We also do a lot on social media. We'll do panels on Facebook Live. We do a lot of interactive like polls, and we take your questions on Instagram. So for right now, those are the best things that I can suggest, because those are the best things that we can offer.
I just want to say this for the students is I think that a lot of them laugh when I say, oh, you know, you should follow them on Instagram or, you know, do these polls and do this stuff. Is it, you know, it is the way that I think just to let them know that you guys, when they're then later reading an application and an essay that talks about something they saw on Instagram that they followed up, and that's really why they wanted to apply, it's like it just kind of makes the whole thing come to life in a way that makes you realize the student really has paid attention. I think it's really
so it lets us know we're doing something right, because it's adults making social media decisions for the teenage population. We have our fingers crossed. Right. So he does write about it in the application. We're like, we did that one right. Yes.
Right, exactly. Versus your website where they might find something that's so buried that you haven't even seen it, right?
Exactly.
So Amy, what about Mount Holyoke? What are you guys doing to kind of engage students or help them engage with you?
The same types of things that Lindsay just said, but what I would say for advice to the students on this, some other things also to look at would be look at the archives of the student newspaper. That can give you a sense of what are the things that people are talking about, what's the spirit on the campus, what do people place priority on, by going back and looking at that. I would also go to whatever part of any institution's website has the calendar of events and activities and speakers, And I would not use the spring semester as the example this year because a lot will have been canceled, but go back maybe to the fall semester and the previous spring if that's still available on a website, so that you see what are the kinds of people that are coming and speaking, what are the performers that are there, what are the activities that people get excited about, so that that can give you a little bit of a sense of, is this place offering things that I would enjoy participating in?
That's great. That's really good advice. The newspaper. We do tell students if you're visiting a campus, definitely pick up the newspaper, but also, read the bulletin board. I mean, there's just so many things happening on a college campus that you will never see in the website. So these are all great ideas. Thank you so much. Amy, I'm getting some very specific Mount Holyoke questions, so I will ask you those. One is, and I know the answer to this, but is the teaching faculty at a women's college all women?
Oh, that's a great question. No, we are about 50% men and 50% women. And then, of course, we're in the 5-college consortium, and the Smith campus is about 50% men and women. The other 3 campuses are more heavily skewed toward men. So if that's a factor in any direction for anybody thinking about Mount Holyoke, whether they want primarily women or whether they want a mix, you can kind of shape your experience that way.
Okay, great. And the other question is, and again, I'll let you answer, does Mount Holyoke offer engineering?
So we have dual degree opportunities with Dartmouth, University of Massachusetts, and we do have a partnership with Caltech, but I have to say that one is like almost impossible to gain access to, just in full disclosure. But that's spending kind of like you heard about GW's BS MD program, although where some of your undergraduate work is compressed and then you go on for the more advanced degree. The difference with ours is we're partnering with a different institution rather than keeping you in-house.
Great. So students can spend 3 years at Mount Holyoke and then 2 years at Dartmouth or UMass, right? And get that. Okay.
And the great thing about the UMass option is that you're right in the same geographic area, which is particularly attractive for a lot of students who want to be around their classmates in the final year.
Right.
They're right there.
And yeah, I mean, I'm sure it's a great opportunity for people who just feel that they, after 3 years, want to do something different, and it's different scene, yet it's still really nearby. Are there any other, just since we're on the topic, but are there any other joint programs at Mount Holyoke that are integrated like this, or anything else?
Yeah, so we have programs in MBA. We have we're developing a partnership with data science, although we do have our own data science major, but we're working on something with another institution that I can't name just yet, but a pretty prominent technology institution. And then there are some other partnerships for communications and health sciences. Okay.
Great. So students can just find those on your website, I guess.
Yes.
Okay. And then I guess this is going to be, looks like one of the last questions I'm going to ask you is, how did because parents are so worried and they're, now even more worried and concerned about sending their children so far, and campus safety is always a question. So can you answer that question about, how do you guys handle campus safety? And in particular, what was your response to this evacuation of students and or non-evacuation, as we were discussing in the beginning, during this pandemic? So Lindsay, I'll let you start with that.
Yeah, absolutely. So as far as health goes, because I think health and safety are going to tie in together, we have a full service student health center on campus for both physical health and mental health needs for our students. So that's available to all of our students, regardless of your first year, second year, third year, fourth year, living on campus, living off campus. That is available for all of our students, and it's in our student center. So it's really easy for our students to get to. The physical safety on campus, we are in a city. And I'm never one to shy away from telling students that no matter where you go, you could be in a city, you could be at a very rural school, but you need to be paying attention to your surroundings, and we're no different than that. I've been working at GW since October 2016, and I have never personally had any issues in the Foggy Bottom neighborhood. We have GW police, we have GW security, DC police are always around as well. They send out emergency alerts or emails if we need to know that something is happening. The rumor, we cannot confirm or deny, but because we're so close to the White House, people tell us that the Secret Service is also roaming campus pretty frequently. So I don't know how much they are involved in protecting our students, but they are at least protecting the larger DC area because we are so close to the White House. Just a quick 7-minute walk to the White House. We have the blue light system. So we have light poles all over campus where if you hit the button, it sets off a siren and it alerts the police to your location. We also have an app on our phones called GW Pal that you download it and the same thing happens. You can hit the button and it'll alert GWPD to your location. You can also just use it more passively. If you're walking around campus and want to tell a friend your location, you can share your location through that app just so that they know that you're on your way to them or something like that. And we also have what's called 4Ride, and that is a van service that takes students on campus within 3 blocks of campus overnight. So if our library is open 24 hours. So if you're studying late at night and you don't feel comfortable walking back to your residence hall, you can call 4Ride and 4Ride will come and take students as well back to where you are in a safe ride. So as far as the pandemic went, we obviously, as every other school did, had to make our decisions very quickly. We sent our students on spring break, and our initial idea was that they would just have spring break and then a couple of weeks online, and then we would be all back on campus. So the initial plan was 3 weeks. We are now at 9 weeks. And our students, we asked them to stay home after spring break. So international students who were living on campus did have the option to extend their living on campus. So they could just fill out a form with housing, and housing said, okay, you're an international student. It's fine. You have longer to stay on campus. And then same thing with domestic students in specific situations. I think at this point, we've gotten most of our students back home nice and safely, but it did take a little bit of time, obviously, due to the environment. But we did everything we could to be as supportive as possible, knowing that a lot of our students had a lot of things going on.
Great, thank you so much. So Amy, I'll let you just kind of talk about what Mount Holyoke did. And I think while you're answering that, if you can also just, since we're kind of at the end of time, around this question of concern and anxiety and worry and this and that, give us any advice you have for the applicants in the coming years. So first campus safety, then advice.
I think campus safety is probably a little less robust at Mount Holyoke because of our location. We're not in a city, and our campus is, it's not like there's lots of other buildings sort of mixed in with our campus, but we do have a campus safety staff that monitors around campus. We have a mobile safety protocol similar to what was described for George Washington University. We are a walking campus, so it's contained, but we have the blue light system. We have a lot of the same things that you hear about it at most institutions. Our COVID evacuation plan, we were fortunate in that the timing of our spring break, we were able to announce it prior to spring break. So I think that made it maybe a little bit easier for us. But Mount Holyoke is 27% international students. So we still have 281 students on our campus, most of whom are international and who were not able to get home. So like George Washington, the college was very accommodating of individual needs, and those students are still here. Our seniors are graduating, and so they will be leaving, but I think that we will have a lot of students staying through the summer. But in terms of advice, thinking ahead on safety, it's such a tough thing, but I guess I would monitor what the local governments are saying at the institutions that families are considering, and looking at what the plans are, seeing how robust they are. Are they cautious? Do they seem aggressive or sort of wildly optimistic about reopening things? and paying attention to how state and local governments respond when they do start opening up, if there's a flare up again. You're in the fortunate position as prospective students now to observe a little bit how these things are happening before making a decision, whereas the current class had to decide while there's still so much unknown. So I think I would really watch what institutions are doing in terms of their responsiveness to proactive planning, to what they're sharing in terms of information, recognizing that a lot of times when you want it, it's not available yet because there's too many uncertainties. It doesn't mean that there's no plan. I'm sure this is the same at GWU, that there are multiple plans for the fall, and they're just not released yet, but that people have been working 7 days a week for 2 months now to be prepared for whatever. But I think you just need to monitor websites, state and local governments, to see what your own comfort level is with how responsive you think they're being, and how transparent and how well they're communicating.
Great, thank you. That's great advice. I think that should help everybody get through a little bit more time. Okay, my last question has just come to me. I have two, actually, but I'll let you answer this one, Amy, and then the second one is for Lindsay, more or less. But what is the competitive IB score for both of your colleges? So Amy, you can say that, what you're looking for in the IB.
So, I can tell you that our average score is usually around 37, 38, in that range. However, we admitted somebody with a 31 this year. So because you keep hearing us talk about holistic admission, we are inviting people to be part of a community. And so we're looking most basically of who has the academic foundation to be successful. And I think anybody who earns 30 points on the IB has the foundation to be successful at practically any institution in the United States, because it's a rigorous enough program. But then we're looking to see who is either a great fit with our institution, and for us at Mount Holyoke, it might be somebody who's particularly interested in gender equity issues, maybe somebody who's a bit of an activist. So someone with a lower score but seems like a great fit could be somebody that we would be really happy to admit. And somebody with a 41 who has never done anything but have her face in a screen or in a book and doesn't speak up in class might not be such a great fit. So our average is in that 37, maybe 38 range, but we do have, there's a real high and low above that, depending upon who the student is.
Thank you. I think that's a perfect answer, because I think that students want a number, and you said there's a number and there's lots of things around that number. So Lindsay, can you also tell us how, if you want to give us a number, and then also just adding this to the question, do you have, and can you say anything about an urban planning program? You did mention, so I'll let you just speak about it. Those are the two.
Sure. So I just want to echo everything Amy said about the IB. We're at mid to upper 30s as well, but because of that holistic review process, somebody with a higher score might not get in, but somebody with a lower score might get in because they are a better fit for the institution and what we can offer. So everything Amy said, I'm gonna just say what Amy said. And then we do not have an urban planning program, at least at the undergraduate level.
Okay, great. Those were easy answers. Thank you so much, both of you, for joining us this evening, your morning, and giving us all this great information. I think it's really, really helpful for our students and parents and counselors, everyone who's on this, to hear directly from you, what you think is important for people to know about your program. And for everybody watching, the email addresses are posted here. So please feel free, to reach out directly to Lindsay and Amy and ask them any remaining questions. I think that we've covered everything so far. So thank you very much, and have a great day.
Thank you. It was great to be part of it.
Yes. Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye.
you.